I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Carson City from Quinad Games. Carson City is a 2 to 6 player worker placement game of competitive goodness in the Wild West, although I wouldn't recommend playing with 6 players. I think 4 is really the sweet spot, 3 is pretty darn good too, and 5's not bad, and 6 is just pushing it. But with that said, with this game coming back to crowdfunding, I've decided to review an old favorite, which should give you some indicator of where this already ranks for me. This is a game I've had in my collection for quite some time. I want to say I played it back in 2014 at a friend's house, played this deluxe, whatever, Kickstarter copy that they had, and then immediately wanted to hunt one down for myself because it was an incredible experience, and one that has held up for me, well, I guess going on 8 years now. Carson City, like I said already, is a worker placement game. What you're going to be doing in this game is across 4 rounds of play, you're going to be going through a sequence of selecting a role for the round, using that role's abilities, placing your workers out on the various spots on the board, resolving those workers, and then moving on to the next round. That's the core idea. Not that different than many games you've played before, but where Carson City shines is in just how brutally cutthroat and competitive it is, while also not being so punishing as to scare you off. The game is going to go through, well, a sequence of rounds. You're going to start by selecting a role. There's going to be the 7 basic roles in the game, and then if you have the expansions or the big box over here, you'll have a ton more roles, a giant stack of additional roles you can go ahead and mix in to mix up your experience and the different abilities you have in play. But assuming you're starting with the 7 basic roles, you're going to have things that increase your income, give you an extra placement, give you various guns which are going to be very helpful as you enter the competitive phase of the game. You're going to have extra parcels of land, the ability to pay for extra workers, discounts on buildings plus roads, and then straight up extra money. Additionally, each role gives you the ability to hold a certain amount of money into the next round, which especially if you're walking into a high income earning round, can be very, very impactful, especially as you try to figure out when and where you're trading your money in for victory points in the game. So you're going to start with that role selection, which will also determine turn order, and from there you're going to go ahead into the actual placing of your workers into the worker placement spots and onto the board. And there are a bunch of places you can place your workers, and you're going to be getting extra workers every single round, and whatever you don't use will hold over to the next round, as well as whatever fights you get into that you lose. An aspect we haven't heavily talked about is the fact that there are going to be fights in this game. There's going to be the idea that your workers can clash with other workers and only one person will be left standing, but the upside is, whenever you don't win a fight, you will at least get that worker back to place again in the next round. So, you're going on the board, you're placing your workers, and you can place them in a variety of areas. You can place them down onto parcels of land in order to claim the idea that you want to buy that parcel. Again, going back to the general idea, another player can also go into that parcel of land, at which point there will be a fight out, a duel, once you hit that phase of the game. So that's going to be an important aspect of the game, is you will resolve fights whenever there are multiple people in a spot. You can also go onto actual spots on the board to actually take the various worker placement spots. So for example, you can go over here and say, you know, I want to go ahead and buy this building, and I'm going to take this building, I'm going to pay $10 in order to get the bank. I want access to that, and again, other players can go there as well. You can hop over to Eagle Valley Arms over here, and hopefully get this 3 gun token, which will help you in resolving fights, because you'll have more strength, although, as usual, someone else can fight you for the gun that will help you in the additional fights as the game progresses. You can also, let's grab an additional tile for this, you can also go ahead, once the players have their own buildings in play, and they're earning income, you can even place your own workers on someone else's building in order to take half their income if they don't contest you for that spot. So you have the ability to both place buildings, to build buildings, to grab parcels of land, to go on any of the worker placement spots which we haven't heavily gotten into yet, as well as to hopefully take income from other players. If that person's building up a huge repository of income generating buildings, that's great, but you can take half their money every single round unless they are making sure to protect those buildings. That's the general idea of the worker placement phase. You place these workers out on the various spots. We'll cover some more of the spots later as we go through this, but then after everyone's done placing the workers, you will go through a sequence of resolving everything one at a time, and this is where we'll show you how everything plays out. Over here, you can go to get $4 or to buy a horse. And over here, there are duels. This is friendly. Any number of players can go there. Over here, you can go to try to get that extra token, which will give you the extra firepower. Over here, you'll get 3 roads. That's important because many of the buildings, not all of them, but many of the buildings require that they be connected to the town in order to be able to, in order to generate their income, in order to get everything. So you need to get those roads in order to, bring them into play. Additionally, you'll have over here where you can go, again, get a single road. And again, no duels. This part's friendly. Any number of players can go there. When you get down over here, you're going to resolve any of the parcels of land that players are buying. So if players are buying parcels of land, you're going to add up the value, which is $1 plus $1 for every single house building and mountain that's adjacent to it, which means the more populated the area is and or the more mountains there are, the more a parcel of land will cost. And again, resolve any duels accordingly. You're going to be rolling dice, adding your strength. In general, the strength is going to be equal to the number of guns you have, plus a die roll, plus the number of cowboys you have in reserve, and that's going to determine your strength when you're fighting in a duel. Then from over here, you're going to go through these buildings, resolving them one at a time, paying the cost shown for those buildings, and at the end of the round, any purchased buildings will slide down. So you're going to slowly have these buildings getting cheaper and cheaper as you have these buildings. So you're going to try to choose the buildings you think work for you, and the way these buildings work for the most part is they are all going to give you an income dependent on their criteria. So you're going to be slowly rotating these buildings. If you go ahead over here, let's grab a parcel of land. You're going to rotate the buildings as you go through it, and the building's going to rotate to show you the particular income level and possibly flip to the next side depending on how much income that building is generating. Each building having their own criteria of what they want to be next to. Do they want to be next to ranches? Do they want to be, surrounded by empty parcels of land? Do they want to, be next to houses? There's going to be all these different buildings and criteria for how they score, and being mindful of the parcels of land that you're building, how the Carson City is developing, as well as the specific way a building generates income is going to be key to you deciding how much a building is worth to you, both economically as well as whether you are fighting other players for that building. So you're going to go through all these buildings, and over here you have the opportunity to hold on to a building. You do not have to place it right away. You can hold on to buildings and then place them in a subsequent round. From over here, you're going to get $2 for every parcel of land you control, plain and simple. $2 for every firepower. You're going to roll the dice over here, and when you roll the dice, you're going to see what you roll, and you're going to get $1 for that roll, basically gambling. That was a bad roll. That was a very bad roll. Not worth it. Over here, you're going to go ahead and generate income from your buildings. This is not a worker placement spot, neither of these. Whenever you see the orange is not a worker placement spot, rather a resolution in the sequence of resolving this phase of the game. And so over here, you're going to generate income for your buildings. Again, keep in mind that an uncontested cowboy on your building or a contested cowboy that you lost to will mean that they get half your income. Over here, you're going to get 1 point. This is where we start moving into points, which ultimately is how you win the game. Over here, we get a point for every 2 parcels of land you control, a point for every 2 firepower you have, a point for every building. 5 points can be converted, $5 can be converted into a point, $4 to a point, $3 to a point, and $2 to a point. And if you're wondering why you'd ever choose the worst conversion, well, the first reason is someone else may have gone to another spot, and they may have more firepower than you. And additionally, as the game progresses, this is slowly going to shift upwards, reducing the amount of spots you have access to. Basically, the earlier you turn your money into points, the better the exchange rate. Whereas if you hold on to it to build up your engine, which makes sense, it builds up your engine, it does mean you'll have a worse exchange rate as the game progresses. That's going to be how that works. From over there, these parts all are worker placement. At the end of the round, without having to place a worker, you can always convert $10 to a point. But again, that's going to be only helpful to an extent, especially if you don't have that much money, and especially because this happens after you hold on to your money, which means your players who have an amount of money they can hold on to every single round, the rules give you a certain limit of how much you can hold on to, means even if you're generating a ton of money, unless you chose a worker placement spot to convert it in, or unless you have a lot holding on to, you'll only be able to convert in so much of that. That's basically how that plays out. You're going to go through this for 4 rounds of play. Effectively, every single round, you're going to get more cowboys based on the round. And so every single round, you have more workers to place out, more cowboys, workers, whatever. You're going to be placing them onto the board in order to grab parcels of land. You're going to be placing them onto the worker placement in order to go ahead and get the actions associated, which are points, money, and buildings. And you're going to be placing them onto other players' buildings in order to deny them income and get income for yourself, all while selecting the role that helps you the most. Going back to this gunslinger over here, this guy's going to give you 3 extra guns, which is awesome. That's going to help you in all the duels, especially if you go here, you'll even get that extra 3 guns while resolving the ability to get 3 extra guns, which means you don't have to build an incredible economy in this game. You could just take what others have built, which can be frustrating for some people, but rewarding for others. And that's basically Carson City. You're going to go through 4 rounds of play. At the end of the game, you're going to add up any remaining money into points, limited by how much you could hold on to based on the role you chose. You're going to add up all your points and see who won the game. There are a bunch of expansions that I'm not going to be getting into over here. Some expansions I've played, some I have not. This big box comes with basically everything in there. There's different aspects to the game. There's going to be a luck mitigating factor in case you don't like the die roll of, well, the duels. You can have the tiles instead that you can cash in. There's going to be the horses expansion that gives you all these like horses, bandits, all these things. There's a bunch of extra ways to add variability and or new content to the game experience, but that is Carson City, the big box from Quinn Ed Games. And to that end, let's start with the review, starting off with ease of play. For the most part, the core gameplay of Carson City is pretty streamlined and pretty straightforward. The rulebook for the core rules is, I think, only like 3 or 4 pages long, maybe a bit more. I might be mentally consolidating it because like there's always setup and components and all that. There's 3 to 4 pages of rules that need to be read as far as just the pure sequencing of everything else. The biggest obstruction to the ease of play, and an element that I still do not love to this day, is the fact that all these buildings have certain aspects on them. We haven't heavily talked about some of the nature of the way the board develops, and one of those is the fact that many buildings require you to build a house when you place that building onto the board, and so you're slowly expanding the town of Carson City. Effectively, hey, you built another building, more people are attracted to the town. You built another building, more people are attracted to the town. Some of those buildings also count as houses for the purposes of scoring. That's not the part that's frustrating. The part that's frustrating to me is the fact that you have a building like this, for example, that it counts as a house, it's a school, but when you build it, you have to build 3 houses. Which is great, except that's not indicated anywhere on the tile. That's going to be a regular occurrence in this game where the symbology, the iconography, and what they expect you to remember and or look up, I feel there could have been ways to incorporate the graphic design onto the tiles in a way that made the buildings themselves a bit more user-friendly. Doesn't matter how many times I play Carson City, if I haven't played it in a month or two, I have that rulebook open and I'm flipping through the buildings as they come out and telling everyone, okay, great, this one you'll have to build 2 houses, this one counts as a house. You're going through that symbology. Again, it's not, some of them are pretty clear, but the fact that you have to constantly have these little extra rules as far as what you do with them means it's a little bit frustrating. I just wish it were all on the tile. That's the only real complaint I have as far as ease of play. And then as far as game time, generally around 90 minutes to 2 hours for a game, at least in my experience. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, to begin with the fact that this is worker placement with a duel mechanism, which is something I haven't really seen that much. For the most part, or at least possibly at all, I don't know. For the most part, worker placement has that tight aspect of, there's different kinds of worker placement. There's worker placement where it's all friendly and shared, and it's just about your own little puzzle as you place things onto the board in different ways in order to get whatever you can out of it, which is great. But for me, the worker placement that I prefer more is when you have to vie for certain spots. I go to that spot and you're like, curses, I wanted that spot, that's important for what I need, but I need 3 different spots and I can't go to all of them all at once. I like that tension in worker placement as you go to what you need and hope others don't go there. Carson City one-ups that by saying, no, go ahead, go there, be my guest. You can go anywhere you want. It doesn't matter whether someone went there or not. Going there first is almost a certain sense of, I'm here, if you want to go, you have to fight me. Going there second is, I got the guns, I don't care, I'm going to fight you. And sometimes you'll even hold back workers, cowboys, in order to contribute toward your strength for the next round, in order, as you go through the combat, as you resolve things. And one fun little aspect is, as you lose combats, you pull your workers back so that they inherently contribute to your next combat, which means if you are in a bunch of fights in a round, you are more likely to continue to win them if you are losing the first ones, which is a nice compensation prize for losing. That aspect of having the tension, you have the tension of wanting that spot, and only one person can resolve it, but you don't have the tension of going there first. Instead, you have the tension of combat mixed into the gameplay in a way that I generally haven't seen. And then combined with that, the fighting isn't too punishing. Yes, you don't get to resolve your action, but you do get your worker back, so you lost the action now, but you'll have the action later. Obviously, economies and tableaus and procedural aspects being what they are, you still lose the fact that you're not building it this round and you can only do the thing next round instead. So there's still a loss. There's still a reason why it matters, and it matters a lot. But it's not overly punishing, and getting that cowboy back means you have more success in the fights this round, as well as you'll have that placement next round, so it doesn't matter that much, although it still does matter. And there's a good mix of how you handle the game, or what you can do, both in terms of the buildings you can build, when you try to cash things in for points, what extra spots you're going for, how you build out your parcels, where you try to take things from others. There's a lot of aspects to consider as you go through this game in terms of just how the town is developing, the impact you can play on the town developing, the way you can mess with others by building buildings where it hurts them and building things where it hurts you. There are a lot of levers to pull as you go through this game, both in terms of the fighting, the role selection, and just what you do across the board in all of these actions. This is a game that is both incredibly simple in terms of what you have access to doing, while being very complicated and nuanced in terms of the decisions you make as you build things out. And there's a high variability in terms of the roles, buildings, especially once you incorporate the expansions. In addition to the fact that there are expansions that add mechanical changes, there's just stacks of buildings and stacks of roles that give you more variability to. You'll start the game with the core rules, which are the seven roles you have, as well as the basic buildings. But from there, you can mix in and add in more and more and more. And I like adding in more and more. Forgetting even just the expansion mechanical changes. Even just within the extra variability of the roles and the extra variability of the buildings, there's just a ton of variability to the experience, variability that you can both have in general as you play it, but also mixing things in slowly to have your core game of Carson City and then slowly evolve it with yourself and with the other players so that you have more stuff that you're seeing and more things to consider strategically as you go through the game. And overall, it just plays fairly quickly while giving you a punchy, mean worker placement game. 90 minutes to 120 minutes I find in general. You can probably get that down a bit if you're really playing it aggressively fast, but between the table talk, between the infighting, between the swearing up and down that you're never going to be friends with that person again, this is not genuinely, at least not for our group, but it could be for your group. This overall just gives you a solid game for the playtime, for the depth of experience, and unique in the fact that it's a fighting worker placement game. As far as what I don't like, the main thing I have that I don't like, aside from the iconography issue on those tiles, which again, this game is so well produced, I just wish that were not an issue. And then also in terms of what I like, I should mention the way this game is set up in terms of the deluxe insert, these various, little boxes where you hold the player goods and all that stuff nicely in there. There's just a lot of beautiful things. These revolver dice, which I don't know if you see these over here, but those are little pips as far as how many pips your revolver has. The quality of the components in general. Oh, and I should probably show you these as well. These are some of my favorite metal bits in any game I have. These are just incredibly premium. I hope these are available when this comes back to crowdfunding. But effectively, we have over here these little pieces here that are these are so chunky, these metal pieces. I don't know if you can hear that over there, but yeah, that's what we have over there, which as far as what we do like. As far as what I don't like, past the iconography issues that I mentioned, the only other thing I have is the fact that late game, the rolls can be more punishing. Early game, I don't mind. Early game, the whole thing balances out nicely, plus you get everything back. The very last round of play, having a bunch of bad rolls can be the difference between winning or losing, and you don't even get the compensating aspect of, hey, you have your cowboy for next round. That last round is the most punishing when the combats occur, and the nature of the game also means that the last round is often where more combats occur. So I would say the only real complaint I have as far as the nature of what this game is doing, the head-to-head fighting within the worker placement, within a tight Euro, but also with rolling dice and hoping for the best. I don't mind it for the first 3 rounds of play. The last rounds, it can work out not great. And I don't mean when you lose. When you lose, you lose. That's part of the game. I mean when you lose against all odds. When you roll the 1 and your opponent rolls a 6, and a fight that you totally should have won on 78% of the rolls means that you still lose, that's where it can be frustrating the last round of play. That's the biggest issue I have with it. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, it's a competitive worker placement game. If you don't like the fact that you're going to place a work onto a spot and someone else is going to go ahead and take that spot from you and fight and roll dice and win, if you don't like the sense of cutthroatness that this game will have, then this might not be for you. This is a game which you're doing your own thing until someone walks in with 6 guns and says, I want that thing instead. I love the degree of tension that this game provides, but it is cutthroat and mean in terms of what it's doing. Lots of it is just about the tension. A lot of it is just about the fact that I have the guns, and so you're not going to challenge me where I go. But other times, it's about the fact that I have the guns, and I'm going to take the thing that you went for, and the more that happens to you in the game, the more frustrating it can be. Happening a little bit, not the end of the world. Finding yourself losing 1 or 2 placements every single round to other people who are a little trigger happy, it's not the most fun thing, or could be not the most fun thing, depending on the kind of player you are. And then I'll also say that unless you have expansion content, this is a game that could get samey after a few plays. If you're just playing with purely the base game and you're not mixing it up at all, if you just have the core rules, the core buildings, and nothing else as far as mechanical or extra content based, this is a game that I do find does get a bit samey. Very, very good, but it still can, I find this is a game that I definitely use and benefit from the extra content a lot. As far as final thoughts on Carson City, and this should be pretty clear because like I said already, I've had this game since around 2014. I've loved this game for quite some time, and my opinion has not really gone down in all that time. I find this game phenomenally well done, and it's a weird puzzle because to me the idea of having an action taken away from you, I often find that a very frustrating experience, and in some other systems the nature of having my worker placement spot just removed from me round after round, I could find that frustrating and annoying in other systems. For whatever reason, it works well for me here. I like the tension, I like the worker placement, I like the rolls, I like the buildings, I like all the things I'm doing as I try to build up my tableau, build up as much income as possible, being mindful of the plots of land that work for me, taking the right worker placement zones, challenging you for those, taking a role that helps me economically or military or whatever it is, getting extra workers. There's tons of things you can do in this game as far as the ways you can approach it, and it is a game that has continued to hold up for me year after year after year. It does not hurt to have the deluxe over-the-top version. That definitely adds to the general, just the quality of everything everything going on here. Overall, to me, I adore this game. It's a 4.5 out of 5. The one aspect that pulls away from it is the fact that, at the end of the day, it's a tableau worker placement Euro game that can absolutely come down to just messed up bad dice rolls at the very end. It takes a little bit away from the experience, but overall, a solid game. Highly recommend this one. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, if you're looking for brutal, tough, mean worker placement games, Kalis is one that still holds up, that is mean in a very different way. That moving of the, I don't know what it's called, but the moving of the starts with a P, I think, maybe, I don't know. The moving of one of those characters that can remove worker placement spots from you. Lots of fun, very mean in a totally different way. And then if you're looking for another game where you can have your workers ejected as someone else comes in with a stronger power, but it gives it back to you in the same round instead of the next round, Lancaster is another worker placement game with a bunch of other things going on that I think is brilliantly well executed. And if you like this, I think you'll like Lancaster, and very much vice versa. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.